So hold on to your hats because I've got a lot to say. Those who know me well, that is not a surprise, is it? Okay. I'm Sarah Gardner. I'm a clinical evidence specialist at Doncaster and Bassetlaw teaching hospitals, and I've been working in and around NHS health libraries for more than 25 years. I've been tangling with critical appraisal for a good chunk of that time, and it did not start out as a source of unfettered joy. Picture the scene, if you will. 2006, my first critical appraisal training day. Prior to going on that course, I'd never considered research methodology. I'd never really thought that things could go wrong with research, or that journals, peer-reviewed journals, could be anything less than accurate and reliable. It was an eye-opener. It was scary. It was fascinating in equal measure, but it was not immediately useful, as frankly, I was rather overwhelmed and scared. I filed the notes. Fast forward, the early 2010s, I filed them for a while. I'd changed jobs. My new library was approached to prepare and deliver a training session on appraisal for specialists, associate specialists and specialty doctors, aka SAS docs. When my manager asked me, it seemed like a great opportunity. I could rev up those very faded skills acquired on the scary course 5 years ago. So I presented a rough lesson plan to the SAS tutor, who responded, sorry, yeah, I didn't mean that sort of appraisal. And then he said, oh, but it's great. Yeah, you do that, and then it'll need to be accredited, so that won't be a problem, will it? So that was 0 to 60, really. I gulped, I dusted off my training notes, I did a lot of reading, and I fleshed out the lesson plan into a sort of 1 hour theory session with the short practical activities that I'd lifted directly from the scary day that I'd been on. I added the 2 papers that we'd looked at on the scary day because I got those crib sheets. And I filled in the RCP accreditation application, and then it was too late to back out. So we were go for launch. And I was so apprehensive in the run-up, honestly. But I think it went pretty well. But in truth, I barely understood what I was telling people about the stats bits, and I dreaded being asked for a different way to explain something, difference between odds ratios and relative risk, for example, or have to explain the point of them. But on the day, I think, like we all do when we're delivering training or presentations, just switch into performance mode, and then you dredge up some fake confidence and go for it. And nobody asked me anything awkward, or perhaps they did, and I buried that pit opening up beneath your feet feeling so very deeply that we needn't go there. So maybe some tips from my bitter experience on coping. In my sort of history with it, I did, after that course, what I should have done to start with, which was go on training that was a bit less full on. And I did read around the topics, and I furthered my own understanding of it, because critical appraisal doesn't come from training, and it needs some work. Unfortunately, it's a thing that you do to yourself, really. It's not something that's done to you. So I did tend to cling to seriously dull systematic review on mattress softness and an RCT on tap water versus sterile saline for simple lacerations, and I duly trotted them out on all occasions. And why wouldn't I? Frank, why wouldn't you? I mean, familiarity with the papers at least lets you feel a little bit less of the hideous imposter syndrome feeling, which is a mercy. So I kept that up with the pet papers for quite some time and for quite some audiences. It was always to mixed groups that were advertised as open sessions for all staff. And the feedback was good. And I got quite slick at the delivery, although I always needed to fake the appearance of confidence. You know, what if someone asks me something awkward? What if I don't know the answer? What if I look like a giant fraud and my reputation's shot and I end up dying alone and penniless under the railway arches? It's like, good grief, woman, get a grip. So a grip was got. So one day I was outreach librarian then, and I met a physiotherapy team, and they were really keen to have critical appraisal skills session on RCTs as a group. Now, you may know this already, but physio's a fabulous group of staff, and they're really quite badly served by generally poor quality evidence. And suddenly my pet RCT on tap water versus sterile saline for wounds looked decidedly lame. So I stepped up and I designed a session that was focused on their needs rather than one that was geared towards protecting my insecurities. So I found a Cochrane review on something interesting to them, and I studied the risk of bias chart, and I was looking for a trial that had got a mix of green and red blobs in the right places. I landed on one, read the Cochrane review, made loads of notes. Job done. Do you know what I hadn't foreseen was how different the session would feel if I had a targeted paper? I mean, normally the only thing you can guarantee with an open session, if you're honest, is that absolutely nobody is interested in the paper you chose. Everyone is going through the motions, and that's what I was resigned to. But in the clinical team focus session, the discussions are so different. The participants care about the subject. They bring their own experiences to bear on interpreting the results. They're assessing the methodology, working out if it can work with them, and maybe not just clinically. Sometimes they also discuss how they want to do similar research. It's awesome. I feel like I'm at the interface of clinical librarianship, evidence-based practice, and research, and it's really uplifting. So apologies to Edison for mangling his quote. When I changed trusts in 2015, I actually turned my back on open scheduled sessions at all, and I focused completely on delivering critical appraisal in teams as part of their continuing professional development, because it felt like it was the obvious and logical extension of outreach and clinical librarian work. You find out what evidence the team needs, you deliver it, and then, if necessary, you help them gain the skills to appraise it. What I would say is, don't just stick to RCTs. They're not uniformly useful. So you do need to mix it up with the study types. So emergency medicine doctors, clinical scientists, they love diagnostic test accuracy studies. I work with some pediatric occupational therapists. They love a cohort study. Everybody likes a systematic review. So you do have to be willing to explore a bit. When I'm working with teams that do their sort of CPD as lunchtime teaching, you do need a slightly different approach, because there's no time for a leisurely theory session. And if you try doing theory one week and practical the next, all you end up with is two entirely different sets of doctors coming to the sessions. So for those, I pick a paper that lets you get a certain amount of theory that sort of surfaces during the session. And I have a few slides that I can whip out to illuminate some specific points or explain some statistical tests. You see, I'm still trying to avoid being asked a question I can't answer. Other ways to mix it up. I try and use a calculation sheet as part of a group activity. You take basic results data, you create a 2x2 table, and then the logical steps that you need with the stats to build it up to the point where they can calculate absolute risk reduction or number needed to treat, whatever you're doing. And then rather than pick on people to give the answers, I get everyone to say them at the same time. We do like choral speaking feedback, and it makes them laugh, and no one's too embarrassed if they've got the answer wrong. And that approach I get good feedback for. The doctors particularly say it acts like a refresher for them, and they don't have to endure death by PowerPoint. Often use a bit of interactivity. You can't go wrong with like a matching game on AHA slides. People can get quite competitive. It's good fun. So that's really useful for a few different things. Definitely use something other than CASP occasionally. It's not like CASP isn't fantastic, but it isn't the only game in town. Beginners to critical appraisal, you might find Oxford CEBM checklists a bit more accessible, but the notes that accompany the sign checklists are amazing. QuadAS 2 revolutionised my understanding of diagnostic test accuracy studies. So there's things out there. Do mix it up a bit. It doesn't even have to be one checklist. You can mix and match questions if it suits the paper that you've chosen. Maybe challenge the audience to come up with more synonyms than you for a systematic review session. I did that with ED doctors, and it was on Ringer's lactate and balanced crystalloids. You can demonstrate that way that the systematic review is only as good as the search strategy, and I won. But it's a good activity. You can do it online, you can do it in person. It works well. What also works surprisingly well is two papers at once. So I found two papers on treatment for asthma exacerbation. It was in a Cochrane review, and they were like night and day on the risk of bias chart. And I could use both because it showed what good looked like, and it showed what awful looked like. And you can, really bring things out there. I think you have to accept that virtually nobody does the pre-reading. So I prepped the papers with lots of highlighting and then handed them out. And then whoever got whichever paper had to teach the other group about their paper. So I'd given them some a few minutes to skim read the highlighted bits so that it went faster. And we could examine the different approaches to the methodology. We could talk about essentially how difficult it was to carry out research in ED. There was lots of things we could do. So a willingness to have a go has given me such a lot of job satisfaction. It's been able me to confidently offer journal club support or critical appraisal anywhere. And these days I don't really worry too much about that whole ending up penniless in the gutter thing. But I can't emphasize this enough. Sometimes you do have to just let go of the rail, take a deep breath. It will keep you calm and buoyant, and you can bob about then, if not actually swim. It's so life enhancing to conquer your fears, whatever they may be. And by all means, start off with material you're comfortable with, but don't be trapped by it and risk missing opportunities to engage with the clinicians where they're at, because it's such a fascinating and rewarding place. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? We have time for questions now.
Yeah, so my presentation is going to focus on teaching searching and the Knowledge and Library Hub. Specifically, I'm going to be focusing on how we at Berkshire Healthcare have had to adapt and evolve our searching training and the challenges and barriers that we've faced teaching health staff and kind of our most recent evolution to FAF. And I will explain what FAF is in a minute. So pre-COVID, we had a session called Finding the Evidence Workshop, or FEW for short. This was always in person and it was 2.5 hours. It included a demo of HDAS. Later it was a demo of the hub, and it included 20 minutes for the students to practice searching, with the trainer able to go around the room, look at their computers and give advice. It was pretty popular and we never really had trouble filling the dates. But then obviously COVID happened, and as with most things, all of our training went online, and the training was adapted to be delivered through Teams, but otherwise the content and the length kind of stayed the same. We also had availability of the trainers was difficult at this time as well, due to staff sickness and changes. So there also wasn't very much promotion, and the attendance kind of started to drop. We then wanted to offer face-to-face sessions occasionally, and also on demand. And we did a very limited number of face-to-face sessions for specific teams. But whilst on feedback forms, lots of people were saying they would like face-to-face sessions, no one actually took it up when we offered it. And then still with low take-up and attendance, we decided to change the name of the session slightly, as we thought perhaps that FEW wasn't really explaining what the session was about or what people would learn. Now, I know a lot of people have debated about whether or not to change the name from FEW, and if so, what do you change it to? So we decided on Finding Evidence in Articles. It was a bit more descriptive, might encourage people who want to find articles that this is the session for them. It was still online with kind of face-to-face optional, but no one ever asked for it, and still 2.5 hours with 20 minutes for searching practice. Then very briefly, we decided to shorten our training because perhaps staff couldn't find 2.5 hours in their diary to do a course about searching, and it wasn't a mandatory course. And it was also really tiring for us as trainers, and we were struggling to find the time in our diaries too, as we were taking on a lot more work. So we took out the interactive parts, we took out the 20 minutes of searching practice, and we shortened it to 1.5 hours. However, this meant a lot of talking for us, and no interactivity or practice, which was not great for the students. And luckily, we didn't do this for very long. And then finally, we moved to FAF. So with the new user interface of the hub coming out in July 2025, we decided that what we were demoing in our session was not really applicable anymore, as the hub wasn't really doing what we wanted to show them very well. And we thought, actually, again, we need to shorten this session to kind of encourage people to come along. So we changed it to a 30-minute session called Find Articles Fast. And I'm going to talk about what this session includes in more detail. So as we were reducing the content down to just half an hour, we picked the key aspects of the hub that we wanted people to know. So basically these were what the hub is, how to access it, when to use it, how to access other resources and databases, how to do a basic search to find articles, books, and ebooks, how to access them, and how to request them. So in the session, we only have 6 slides with minimal information on, and then half of the session is a demonstration of the hub. Instead of pointing out all of the features that are available on the hub, we've picked out just the ones that they would need if they were trying to find an article, and point them out in the chronological order, so following the user's journey. So instead of pointing out the saved items folder when we're kind of showing them the homepage, we point it out when we've found an article that we want to save. We moved all of our kind of advanced features and discussion around Pico or searching frameworks, wildcards, combining searches, all of that stuff to our expert searching one-to-one sessions. If we suddenly get kind of lots of bookings for one-to-ones, we might look at making this a kind of formal session. So we market the FAF session as a beginner or also as a precursor to doing advanced searching, and suggest that once they've done FAF, they should then book onto an expert searching session if they feel like they need to develop those skills further. So here's a couple of screenshots of our slides for FAF. So we do have a different set of slides for the attendees afterwards that include screenshots of each part of the demo with more text to explain, so they can use these as a reminder. But we kind of kept them all like really clear, very simple language as well. So why have we changed it? The main issue we had was time. So 90 minutes was still too long for a session, and it was still deterring clinical staff from attending. So if we had a shorter session, we could put more sessions on if we needed to, and it'd be easier for staff to fit it in and also get approval to attend. We've never done a 30-minute course before, so it is a bit of a risk. We also really needed to encourage attendance, especially at a time when like KPIs and data about our training is really important. So if we could create something short and impactful, then we could maybe start getting kind of 10 to 15 people on a session again, rather than one or no one, which is what we were seeing some of the time. And we also started thinking about who was signing up to the course and how we were marketing it. So we were trying to fit two types of people into the same course: those who wanted to know advanced searching skills and those who wanted to just access quality articles quickly to support a project or learn something new. So for some people, they were learning stuff which may have been relevant at some point in time, but it wasn't meeting their needs right now. So now the session is more suited for everyone at any skill level, and we have clear next steps for those who need more advanced skills and knowledge. I also found that the new Hub user interface had made it a bit more difficult to teach the aspects that I would have taught before. So for something that used to take 3 clicks, it now takes 6 clicks, which just makes it a little bit more difficult to explain. We can still teach these advanced features and things like Pico and wildcards, but we do find that this is easier in a one-to-one setting, as you can teach it at the speed of the learner, and you can use a better database for their needs as well. We're also finding that lots of people were struggling to understand Pico and trying to fit a research question into Pico that wouldn't really fit. However, it was still the framework that they were most familiar with, and most of them still found it really helpful. And again, however, it's not really necessary to know this if you just want to do a kind of basic search. And finally, we wanted to integrate increased awareness of LKS services into the training. So whilst we're still teaching them to search independently, through the session, we reinforce how they can get support from us, like how they can get books posted to their work and home address. And as this is beginner session, we want them to know that we are there for them, and how we can support them if they need it. So the main issue with the 30-minute course is that there isn't time for interactivity. Which is a big shame, because we know that the interactivity done in the right way can really enhance learning and embed the skills that they've learned. So previously we've used things like using Padlet to get them to practice putting parts of a research question into Pico, which had a few kind of mixed results, or asking them to share their screen and offering advice. But we couldn't do any of this in 30 minutes. So how do we build in time to practice and interactive experiences to help them process their learning? So what we've done, we've created a post-session searching handout, which has a mixture of quiz questions and searching exercises that they can do either straight after the session or a few days or weeks later. So this is a 4-page protected Word document that is emailed out to them, and it kind of takes them through what we've demoed in the session, The trainer will block out 1 hour in their diary, so 30 minutes for the session and 30 minutes protected time to stay on the call. And if any of the learners want to stay on the call and practice the skills that they've learned or go through the searching exercise there, then the trainer will be on hand to answer any questions or offer advice. And these are some screenshots of the handout. So this is just for the learners. We don't see it unless they share it with us. But the idea is that it kind of tests their knowledge and skills in an interactive way without putting them on the spot. 1 minute left. Okay. So we did a test session in August with a couple of people from our wider clinical education team who gave us feedback and helped us to practice the timings. Our first session is booked for next week, and we currently have, well, that says 11, it's currently now 12 out of a maximum 15 signed up, but we've also got more people signed up for our future sessions as well. So far the take up is a lot better than it has been in the past. We've booked 1 per month, but if we get more interest, then we can put more sessions on easily, as it doesn't take up much of our time. And we're also offering kind of a public health specific session, and we'll be planning some strategic marketing as well to encourage sign-ups. And finally, as we do sessions, we'll constantly be reviewing the feedback, both from the attendees and ourselves as trainers, and making updates. So thank you very much for listening.
So yeah, I have been delivering reflective practice workshops for about 3 years now, and it was something that I introduced to my trust. And I know it's maybe not as common as critical appraisal and searching for obvious reasons. So I would love to know, just like as a quick survey, do you currently offer sessions on reflective practice at your trust within the library service? So if you could like put your thumbs up if you do, just so I can kind of get an idea of who actually teaches it. A few, or lots of thumbs up. That's nice. Brilliant. So yeah, just to give some context, I work at MFT in Manchester, which is I think it's one of the largest trusts in the country. So we've got 28,000 staff across 10 hospitals. So as you can imagine, that's a lot of potential audiences. We have 4 library sites, and we offer the core training. But the vast majority of our sessions are one-to-one, but we occasionally do group sessions that are like tailored to specific departments, for example. But for my reflective practice sessions, I do them a bit differently because I promote them on the Learning Hub, and I do them every other month, and they're open to all staff. So it's kind of a bit of a different model to what we do with our other sessions. So why did I decide to start teaching reflective practice? Firstly, reflective practice is a big thing in healthcare. It's required for revalidation in CPD for all healthcare professionals, particularly nurses and AHPs. I think it's a really good topic because it's kind of promoting well-being and resilience, and it's nice to kind of talk about those aspects, I guess, in the job, especially when these people have got really tough jobs. It's really nice to give people space to reflect on that. Yeah, I think it's, as I said, really valuable for healthcare workers in particular. I felt it was a gap in the training that we delivered because I did some research to see if it was being taught elsewhere in the trust, and I couldn't really find anyone else teaching it, despite the fact that it's a big requirement for revalidation. So I felt like there was a gap in the market, I guess. And finally, it's a really enjoyable topic to teach. I get really good feedback, and because it's a group session, it's really nice to kind of share thoughts and ideas, and I try and make it like an open space for people to get into the mindset of reflection and reflective practice. So in terms of the session itself, as I said, it's multi-professional, so I offer it to all staff. I don't tailor it to any particular profession or department. I try and make it practical, so I have like a writing activities during the session, and I try and get people to speak about what they think about reflective practice and how they find it. And yeah, I offer only as a group session. So, unlike our other training sessions, it's purely just for the groups because I think that's the most effective way to teach it, in my experience. So yeah, what's covered in the session? So I talk about the benefits and barriers to reflective practice. I talk about the different models of reflection. So for example, Gibbs and Borton, those are probably the two main ones. I also talk about Moon's 4 levels of reflective writing. And if you are thinking about teaching reflective practice and reflective writing, I would really recommend including this in your session, because people find it really useful in my experience, because when they're coming to the session, they're wanting to learn about how they can develop their writing mainly. They often refer to it as kind of, I think it's like level 7 writing or something. And that the Moon's 4 levels of reflective writing really helps people kind of develop their reflections from like a one that's less developed to one that's a lot more developed. And I do a 15-minute writing activity at the end where I encourage everyone to write a reflection using one of the models, or just sort of seeing what happens. And that can be a little bit scary, because it's I deliver the sessions on Teams, and because it's at the end of the session, I'm always a bit worried that people are going to leave, but often people do stay and do the writing activity, which is really nice. And I think that's kind of the feedback I've got previously, that people really enjoy that space and time to do a reflection. So in terms of challenges, I think promoting the session has been difficult. I think now I've gotten into quite a good rhythm with it, and before I was kind of offering it on more of an ad hoc basis, and now that I do it regularly, I think word of mouth spreads and people have been booking on. So I on average get around 10 to 15 people per session, which I'm really pleased with. Keeping to time can be challenging. I only allow 45 minutes for the session, because I kind of wanted it to be long enough to cover the main points, but also not too long to put people off from attending. And that usually works. Sometimes we do run out of time depending on how much audience participation there is. And yeah, audience participation, again, that's a tricky one. I mean, since I've offered it on the Learning Hub, people tend to come with they're more likely to want to kind of participate and put the hand up and talk, whereas sometimes it can be tricky and you're kind of sitting in silence waiting for people to speak. But it really depends on the group. And yeah, keeping the momentum going has been another challenge, because as I said, I do offer it as groups only, which is it can be tricky to get people to attend. So in terms of tips, if you're thinking about delivering reflective practice at your trust, I would really recommend reaching out to others who already deliver the session and seeing what they do, because that's exactly what I did, and I got some amazing ideas. I went to lots of different sessions from different librarians, and my session is kind of an amalgamation of those, to be honest. And I think there's not much point in kind of starting from scratch. You might as well use the amazing ideas that are already out there. So if anyone does want to come to one of my sessions, you'll be more than welcome to, because I do run them on Teams every 2 months. And yeah, also see what's already available at your trust. So it might be that they already have some form of reflective practice that's being taught, in which case, can you tap into it? Can you offer to kind of develop a joint session, for example? Or if you're if you identify a potential gap, then why not utilize that? Because from experience, you will find there is a lot of interest, especially from nurses like practice educators, the PEFs. Those are really good group to tap into, because they've got pre-reg nurses who are really keen to learn about reflective practice, because they need it as a requirement, and they need to write lots of reflective essays. So they're a really good group to target. And yeah, make it practical. I think the parts of the session that I think work really well are when people get the opportunity to practice that writing and giving it a go, because often they don't have time in the normal jobs. So it's a really nice place for them to focus on that